Hi, everybody. We're so glad that you're here. Welcome to the Positive Communication Network first ever workshop, very practical. We're so thrilled that so many people have registered. As of this morning, we had close to 250 people who are joining this very special workshop. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Dr. Julian Marivel. I'm a professor of communication at the University of Arkansas Little Rock. And I am, with my colleagues, one of the co founders of the Positive Communication Network. I want to tell you a little bit about the network and then, of course, introduce our leader and workshop facilitator. And then, of course, launch you into what's going to be a great hour together. In 2022, we got together because we really wanted to promote the study of positive communication. And we decided that we would create a nonprofit organization dedicated to forming this community. So the Positive Communication Network has the mission of fostering a community of people who are interested, dedicated to both creating better social worlds through both research, teaching, and of course, practice. One of our really big, important outcome is we want to use the research that we have on positive communication to make the world around us a little bit better. And so we want to inspire you and encourage you to practice positive communication in your own life. The Positive Communication Network has a vision, as you can see here on the slide, a set of values that we really want to live up to. I'll let you check them out. You can learn more about the Positive Communication Network at www.positivecommunication.net. Super easy. Of course, it takes a lot of people to make this happen. And so I want to make sure that you know that this is a true team effort. The Positive Communication Network was co-founded with 7 people. We've got today, not everybody, but a few of us. We've got Dr. Phil Glenn, who's from Emerson College. He's waving right now, saying hello. We've got Dr. Maggie Pitts, who is at the University of Arizona. She's also waving. You'll get to meet almost everybody through the session. Dr. Tom Sohai is here with us too from Old Dominion University. And of course, our co-founder and speaker for today is Dr. Amy Young. Let me tell you a little bit about her before we get started and then transfer the floor over to her. Dr. Amy Young is a teaching professor at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. In a moment, I'll put her email address so you know how to reach out to her. She's been there for a while, experienced, teaches in the business school, and is involved in both the BBA, the MBA, and executive education program. Her specialty is leadership communication, organizational communication, positive communication, and employee well-being. She's been doing excellent research on both leadership, but recently involved in a project looking at burnout, especially in the health context, and is collecting exceptional data that maybe she'll share with us today, but you can certainly connect with her on. Not only is she a faculty, a scholar, a researcher, but she's also a practitioner, somebody who is out there trying to help organizations improve their culture. And she's developed a number of tools to try to do that, including, as you can see in the bio here, the Blueprint Assessment Tool, all of which is designed to accelerate, improve the way people lead and the way people collaborate together in an organization. She has served as a consultant, as a trainer for a number of organizations. And I'm telling you, we could not be happier to call her a friend of the Positive Communication Network and, of course, a co-founder of that group. So today, she's going to lead us through an exceptional program on how to use the power of positive communication in your own storytelling. We hope you'll stay engaged with us. There's going to be some activities along the way. For those of you who love to be interactive, please make sure you share. Have a white piece of paper ready so you can write down notes and reflect about your own life. But without further ado, let's give Dr. Amy Young a big warm welcome this morning so she can lead our workshop for the rest of the hour. Woohoo!
Sounds good. Let me see. I just need to get my slides up here and we will be running. So I got that. And let me just get this going. All right. So can you see my slide? Whoops.
Not yet.
Now? We good?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Oh, let me see. So sorry. Let me get this up and then I share.
That's okay. We still have
Ah,
people joining.
okay. Cool. All right.
You're all good to go.
Great. Good. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. This is a really special topic, one I actually really enjoy. So I've had a lot of fun putting this together. I teach storytelling in some of the classes that I do, but I'm going to be honest, I have never felt like the expert at storytelling. So I've been trained as an academic. We really specialize in putting people to sleep. And I've learned, oh, I really need to learn how to tell stories because they make the classroom so much more engaging. Also, business presentations really impactful. And I realized, wow, this is a really important skill. So I put a lot of time and energy into trying to figure out how I can become a better storyteller. Not just, being able to say, oh, that was a great story. Oh, that was really impactful. But how do you actually do it? I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've learned along the way. I can't say that I'm an amazing storyteller, but I can say I'm on my way. So, stories, what makes them so great? Where can you use them? You can use them in your professional life. You can use them in your personal life. I have a lot of former students who went through my class, learned how to do this, learned how to present great stories. And they said it was the best thing ever because they gave the most amazing best man speech. So let's get started. You probably have seen something like this with stories so that they have, a plot and there's a particular pattern and you know the elements of a story. So you first start out by introducing the hero, you describe the context, they meet a challenge, they struggle for a while, make some progress, see some hope, then they have setbacks, and then finally the ultimate challenge and they meet the challenge and then there's a resolution, and the hero has changed. Now, I think this is a great way when you're analyzing a story and can see, does it have all those pieces? Not so easy when trying to figure out how to write a story. Most people will start out with, if you start in the beginning, who's your hero and what's the context? You're like, well, I don't even have a story. Part of the problem is that we create those stories as we are writing. So if you start by saying, well, I need to know the context, I need to know the hero, that's not the right place to start at all because you don't know if you have the good content for a story. Other people will say, well, I don't have any interesting experiences. I'm just not that interesting of a person. But I'm also going to show you how actually you probably are. You're just not noticing all the rich content that you could be using for a story. Okay, so why not start with a story? So I'm going to share with you a story that really was transformational to me. So many years ago, I was not many, oh boy, I'm dating myself. So let's just say 10 years ago. I was teaching classes. I'm going to be honest, I was a bit burned out. I can remember this evening very, very clearly in my mind. I just finished classes, teaching classes. I had to get ready for the next day. So I was preparing and I just was exhausted. I was utterly exhausted. It wasn't just, being late in the day, having taught all day. It also was, I really was burned out. I wasn't sure why I was doing what I was doing. I was really focused on writing a lot of academic papers, and I thought, if I learned how to master that and was successful, life would be amazing. And I get there and I'm doing it, but I, what's the impact? I don't know how many people are reading these. I don't know how relevant this is. I really lost a sense of meaning with my work. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but I just kind of kept going through the motions. So this evening, I was leaving my office and going down the hall. It's pretty late, and the lights in the hallway are out. I can't see who it is exactly, but I see two people down at the end of the hall. I recognize one of them. One of them is a world-renowned scholar. He is well known throughout the world by academics, but also in the business world by many CEOs. He teaches executives. He really is one of those people who's at the very pinnacle, the top of a hierarchy of the business school. So, if you think all organizations have someone who really gets to the top and very influential, he's there. He was right there. So, I approach them and I see he's so engaged in this conversation with this other person. Ah, okay. That's probably he's talking to another esteemed professor, an executive, because he's giving his full attention to this person, listening well. He's not in a rush to leave. But when I get up closer, I realize he was talking to the janitor, the night staff. Thought, I wasn't expecting that. I get on the elevator and I have that moment where it's like wow, that was really interesting. I'm surprised. There are a lot of really bright, influential people in this building. But I thought, wow, that's really a great person. I really want to find out what he writes because he's not just a great scholar, he's a great person. You see, what it said to me was that it spoke to something I care deeply about. The idea that every single person deserves human dignity, no matter where they fall in the scale of the hierarchy. And here he was showing that level of honoring the dignity of this person in front of him to someone who typically is invisible in an organization. And I thought, wow, that's really that matters so much to me. The idea that every individual, they matter and we should be treating them well. And that actually we can do this in organizations. We can be like that. We don't have to accept this system where some are more important because of, that they deserve all of our respect and we ignore others. And I thought, wow, that really that was my moment. So I end up finding out, what does this guy study? Well, he actually was one of the founders of the Positive Organizational Center for Positive Organizations and the field of positive organizational scholarship. And I got more and more involved in this research, and then I decided this is what I'm going to study. I gave up everything else I was studying. I said, this is what I'm going to do with my life, and not just write the papers, but find out how we can create organizations like this. I also realized it was such a small action he did. It was just a small gesture. And, I've actually talked to him years later about the meaning of this for me. I doubt he thought it mattered to this other person, and he had no idea it mattered to me. He didn't even know I saw it. But what it said to me is these small actions really make a difference in the world. We never know, but when we're kind and generous and we stand up for the right thing, people notice and it does impact them. So I share that story with you because it's one that had a lot of impact for me. It uplifts me every time I think about it. It energizes me every time I think about it. And that's the hallmark of a positive story. So let me talk a little bit about what makes a good story and what makes a positive story. Okay, great stories, first of all, are based on this idea of a 5-second moment in someone's life. So that 5-second moment for me in that story was this was Kim Cameron, seeing Kim Cameron with that small gesture. And that small moment meant so much to me. It transformed my life. So stories are based on this 5-second moment in your life where something has changed. I got this idea from Matthew Dix, who is a Moth Grand Slam storyteller. When I came across, I was like, that's absolutely right. Every good story I've ever heard, there was that 5-minute moment that's really powerful. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is that great stories, they are both personal and universal. So what I mean by that is that it really needs to be deeply personal. one of the things about stories is that it helps you connect to other people. It helps you feel connected to them. It helps you relate to them. And a little bit of that requires disclosure. So I didn't tell this story to people for a long time because it was so deeply impactful to me. But it is deeply personal. And the more I share it, the more people know this is what I value. This is what I care about. So I really have to disclose a bit of myself when I tell a good story. It's also universal. So it needs to really resonate with other people. They need to be able to experience it too. So if, for example, you got in a plane crash, I don't know if a lot of people are going to know what that's like, but other stories will. Like for the first time you saw your baby smile, that's going to be a universal story. If that had a really deep impact on you, it's probably going to be personal and universal. So that's what you're looking for, to really hit both of them. And the last piece I want to say is that positive stories, they show us what is possible. And that's the beauty of a positive story. It opens up what we can see of what's possible. And with that story with Kim Cameron, it showed me it is possible to bring what you value most into an organization, to live according to your values in an organization, in a business, even in a business school. So that's the piece about positive stories. You know it's a positive story if I feel the uplift, the energy, they're energizing. They have positive meaning, positive connections between people, and positive emotions. And they're going to be the exception. It's going to be a positive outlier. They're unusual. So not every story makes for a positive one. They may be entertaining and engaging, but you're really looking to have something that inspires us to be something more, to reach our full potential as a human species. Okay, so let's move on and think about, crafting them. So this is the technique that I developed in the classroom, and it really evolves around first identifying those magical moments for you, and then, crafting out the additional pieces to it, then putting it in what I call a story generator to get all the pieces in the right place. So I'm going to be walking you through this procedure, this method. But let's get started. Let's start with, I'd like you to reflect on one of these questions, pick the one that resonates with you the most, and take a few minutes, and you might want to write down your answer. Writing actually is really helpful for clarifying what you're thinking, right? Um, it helps you really understand the meaning of events in your life. So actually writing it down is helpful, but you can also just reflect. So we'll take a couple minutes. I want you to think about, pick one of these questions, decide which one resonates with you the most, spend a couple minutes just reflecting on what your answer would be. Okay, we'll give you a couple minutes. I don't know, Julian, are you able to play the music, or?
I can.
I can't because I got it. All right. Well, we'll just take a couple minutes and reconvene after you had some time thinking about it. Okay, so hopefully you were able to pick one and you felt like I could answer that question. If you're looking back on your life, there's probably something you're profoundly grateful for, someone who's had a really big influence in your life, someone who's been really kind and generous or maybe courageous. All of those memories, that's your 5-second moment, right? That's where you start your story. And from there you can build it out, okay? I'm going to share with you another story, and then we'll go through how I crafted this story using this method. So let me first go by sharing the story, and I'll try to go as quickly as I can without, given our limited time. Usually I make this a little bit longer, but I think we got limited time. Okay, so let me go here. All right, so this is a story that's based on a student I had in my class. He was 19 years old. And the time that I was sitting in my office, it was August, and I can remember this clearly because I was preparing for the class. It was coming the next week. It's the end of summer. Nice warm day, windows are open, and loud music pouring in. Reason why is that my office is right across from, the Greek houses, and students come back that first week and it's loud. Every August, it's like that. So there's a knock on my door, and I have a good hunch who it is. I have a hunch that it is Jackson. Now, Jackson, I had in a previous class. It was a core class for the undergraduates. And I was having him again in this upcoming class. Now, this upcoming class, every assignment is a presentation. And what you need to understand is that it's a highly competitive student body. We have a curve grading system. Not everyone's going to get a great grade. And it creates a lot of stress, to have all these presentations. I've had so many students say, I used to be a better presenter when I was in high school, that they're actually going down in their skills, because of the anxiety. They see someone right before them really nail it, and then they have to get up and perform, and the anxiety is too much. So that's the class that Jackson is coming to talk to me about. Now, Jackson is like many, many other students in this program. He really didn't stand out, except for one thing. He had a very severe stutter. And in the previous class, he was so good about raising his hand and engaging in the class, but any answer took so long, and it was a dead silence in the class. And I was a young teacher at the time. I was working to manage it. I didn't want to embarrass him in any way. And I know why Jackson is coming. I know he's going to ask to get a pass on this class. How could he possibly be in this class where he's going to present all 6 assignments and he stutters, a terrible stutter? So he comes in and he said, I want to talk to you about the class. And instead of saying, how can I get out of this? He said, how can I make this work? I'm thinking he's coming to opt out. He's coming to opt in. And I was shocked. But if he was willing to go, I was willing to go. So we're gonna have to figure this one out. Well, I spent a lot of hours with Jackson in my office, coming up with different strategies. How can we make this work? Let's try this. Let's try this. And the day of the first assignment is coming up. I am so anxious. I'm sure he must be so anxious. How is he getting up in front of this very competitive group and presenting, and failing miserably? So he gets up there, and we had it set up where he just had to present 3 lines and just try to get through 3 lines. And that took 5 minutes, and it was dead silence. And I was thinking, I can't believe that I put him through this. I really should not have done this. I should have encouraged him to opt out. So I get back to my office. Now we have students give peer feedback, and it's all computerized. So I go up to my office so I can see what did these other students say to him, because they can be pretty cruel. It's a very competitive group. And I was really impressed. What I saw was, wow, Good job trying to stick through that. I'm really impressed. Way to go. You know, we're rooting for you. They're like, wow, that's really cool that these students are sticking up for him. Well, Jackson and I spent many, many hours in my office trying to come up with a strategy. Some worked, some didn't. But the interesting thing is that in the classroom, everyone tried a little bit harder. See, we started rallying behind Jackson. We really wanted him to succeed. And everyone was so impressed with what he was doing. They tried a little bit more. And soon it changed the dynamic of the class. The competitiveness was gone. We were all supporting each other, right? We get to the final assignment, and he really wants to nail this. We set it up so, we had learned that if he kind of sings through it, he can get through without stuttering. We had finally come up with a solution. So he is able to nail that presentation. Everyone in the class is so proud of Jackson. And there's a standing ovation, and we're crying. To me, that just blew me away that the student had gotten up and done that. Now, if that was the end of the story, that would still be a great story, but it's not. So 1 year later, Jackson came to me and he said, I have to share with you what happened. I'm like, oh, okay. It turned out he really wanted to work at JP Morgan. That was his goal. But he had interviewed at all the big financial companies, and 7 had already turned him down. And now he was going to interview with JP Morgan. And he said the whole day it wasn't working so well. Interview after interview, he could tell that the stuttering was really a problem. And in the last meeting, the interviewer asked, well, can you present? And he said, yes. They invite him back and he nails it and he gets the job. And he's been at JP Morgan for years. And I was so impressed. This is why it impressed me so much. I learned do not assume you can't do something that's only going to hold you back. What limits you is what's in your head. And since then, I've always thought, okay, if I have not failed miserably 5 times, I haven't tried. And it's changed how much I'm willing to show up and be willing to fail. And yeah, I may have 1 or 2 times of failing miserably and I'm, crushed. But I'll say to myself, well, that was one. You're well on your way. You're going to get there. And I've never gotten to 3. I've had two for the things I'm trying, 2 publicly humiliating experiences, but I get there. And I learned that from a 19-year-old kid. So that's, I think, another really good story because it inspires us to be something more. But let me walk you through how I created that story. And with that, I can show you how to create great stories, okay? Because that didn't come out as a great story. All I remember at the time was, oh my gosh, I can't believe that kid, he's great. But then when I went through this process, it helped. Okay, so here's the process. First, part 1 is just finding out what your story's about. You don't know until you are in the process of writing it down, okay? Now, you first start with answering 7 questions. There are 7 questions, and you're not answering them in the order that the story is laid out. That's what gets people in trouble because like they're starting, it's like, well, I don't even know what my story is. We start with that magical moment, and then we answer different questions. Then we come back to all of our answers and we stick it into the story generator, which operates much like, I don't know if you remember the Mad Libs. We just plug in different things and voila, you have a great draft. Okay, so let's get started. The first step, identify that meaningful moment. So you've already done this. You answered that question earlier. You have already identified a meaningful moment in your life. So yeah, you're well on your way. So for me, to me, the meaningful moment was, watching him just lead that group, that has something amazing to say about leadership. They don't always come in the way you expect them. Sometimes it's the most unassuming person who is courageous because he led that whole class. He inspired that whole class to step up. Could be about that. Also, it taught me, go ahead and fail miserably. Go ahead. You're well on your way to accomplishing something. Okay. And then seeing Jackson accomplish, getting that job he wanted. I mean, that was truly inspirational. So those could all be meaningful moments depending on the type of story you want. Okay. That's step one. Now, really clarify, why was this impactful? Sometimes this takes some reflection, but you see, if you look at the grid of the story structure, we started at the very high point, number one, and now we're going to number two, looking at the impact. So really reflect on that answer that you gave to the question earlier. What was the impact on you? See, that's going to be a real critical line at the end of your story of the takeaway. You're telling them the takeaway at the very end, but you're figuring it out ahead of time. Okay. So clarifying the impact and then making it universal. Another really important step is identifying, well, is this going to be, meaningful to other people? Will they find it meaningful? Well, yeah, I think with both of those stories, it was, we all could be a little bit kinder, and small gestures are, that's enough. Just one small gesture a day. You don't know who's seeing it. That's a universal lesson that we could all learn. And also trying a little bit harder, right? That's another lesson that we all can take away. Okay, so that's about making it universal. Now we're ready to go back, work at the beginning. This can be a little bit of a challenging step. So what you have to do is find your beginning, where you're going to start the story. And the way you're going to do this is that you're going to think about what was the experience, the meaningful moment, and the impact on you, and how you felt. Now, give me the opposite. What's the contrast? Okay. So, with that meaningful moment with Jackson, that was really about, feeling like something can be gained by really pushing yourself and not be afraid of the public humiliation. So I need to have something that would really emphasize I'm not willing to do that so that I can go through that transition. Well, I'm thinking about there are many times in my career that I felt that, like the many years of teaching where I was very stiff because I was afraid of failing publicly. But also, when I had that meeting with Jackson, it was, I didn't want to go through and have him fail. I wasn't even the one failing, but I didn't want that experience. So that could be another place I could start it. Now, I chose to start the one with meeting with him in my office because it is most closely connected in time to that meaningful moment. And you want to kind of get your story condensed time-wise because then it will flow a little bit better. Okay. So this may take some time and some thinking, but think about what was the feeling in that meaningful moment that you had. When have you felt the exact opposite? When have you been at your lowest low? And what were you doing, right? And that can help you find your beginning, where you're going to start the story. Now that's going to really help with giving you that nice arc. The lower the low, the higher the high, you got a nice arc. Okay. Now, sharing your low points. This is so important in the story because it helps your audience connect to you. And again, we're getting at what's most personal about you. And often people don't want to share that. But that is what makes a good, one, public speaker, but two, a great storyteller, because you're offering your audience the opportunity to connect with you on a really authentic and deep level. And that's what makes, stories can be a really sacred moment between the speaker and the audience. Okay. So be willing to sort of disclose. Chances are everyone else in the room has felt that too, right? And there's that personal yet universal piece. Okay. So, when I was working on this part of it, it was like, oh, exactly. What was I feeling? What was the physically, how did I feel? I got anxious. I felt like I can't even go on. Like that's the feeling that I get when I'm afraid of public speaking and I'm letting it get the best of me. Okay. So now you've identified the low, low. Now it's about setting your opening scene. Now, this is going back to the very, very beginning where you are opening your story. And often we'll start by saying, I'm going to tell you a really good story. It's about learning to push yourself harder. If you start your story that way, you have already, evoked the analytical mind of your audience. So they're thinking, yeah, 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 as opposed to really letting them be in that moment in the environment and feeling it. And that's what you really want. You want them to start to imagine, to really use the other part of their brain. So think of this as though you're the set designer and you're setting up the set for play. And that play is the location of that opening scene. So when I tell the Jackson story and I go into it, I have a longer version. I will really spend time about how I felt that day. I try to make it so that people can see the office. We can experience Jackson coming in. So they are right there with me. So it's almost like you're just setting a stage and you have a location, and so that they can really be there. Okay. So that's your opening scene, and then describing the journey. So the prompt here is going to say, well, basically, you didn't start out the beginning and get to the end right away. You had some trials and tribulations along the way. So this is the part where I'm thinking about, well, the first time he tried it, we came up with some strategies. He goes out there and he fails, and in the longer version, I have a couple more of those ups and downs to really build the suspense. Okay. And then we get to the final thing of the final presentation. So figure out, like what made it challenging as you're working your way through. And just jot that down. Okay. Now let's see, we are ready to put it all together. And this is the best part, the fun of the story generator. Now, you probably can remember the Mad Libs that we played as kids. You fill in the blank, you ask your friend for an answer to fill in the blank, and then afterwards you could read the story, and it's a very interesting story. So here, now you're going to take the answers you had in the first part, the 7 questions and your answers, and put them back to in the order that they should be. So here you would say, once upon a time, and then I would go into the scene of me in the office, right? Once upon a time, I was in my office and I was, you're setting the stage. I can feel the August air. I can hear the loud music. You're setting that stage so they are right there with you. Then it would be, you describe the challenge. Jackson walks in. He's feeling like I'm going to try to do this, and I was not prepared for that. That's my challenge, right? And I don't know what I'm going to do. You're going to talk about the next one is talking about how you felt, right? That's going to come from your personal reaction in step 6. And then with 7, you're going to fill in how you tried this, you tried that, da, da, da. And eventually you get to that meaningful moment, the impact it had on you, and then the relevance for other people. Okay. So I've done this with my class many times and it becomes really fun. We have a great time and they end up with stories that really, they are personal. They hit a memorable moment. You could tell them in a very, very authentic way, and it has the right story structure. And in the beginning, when they start, they're saying, well, I don't have any stories. But the process of the first part is helping you piece together what your story is. We don't know what we know until we say it. It's a quote from Carl Weck. It is the process of writing and reflecting that you know what your life is about. Okay. All right. What next? Now, I want to point out you have a draft. You got to work on the fine tuning, reworking the text. Um, Now, I will tell my students go for it with using AI at this stage. Now, AI cannot come up with a story for you. I mean, it can, but it's going to be, a very impersonal one that no one will relate to. But AI is really good at rewriting stuff and getting the right words. So, once I have my story and I know, I'll write it all out, I stick it in, and I'll ask it for 5 different ways you could say this. I pick the one that hits that's really what I was experiencing at that moment. Okay. So go for AI. I will say shorter the better. So the more words that you have in there that are not contributing to the story, the more it is clogging up what's most important. People can't see it. Okay, so shorter always better. And then you may need to add some pieces in to make sense of the ending. So, for example, I needed to add into the Jackson story that this was a really competitive classroom environment. Okay, because that was really critical to understanding why it was so tough. Okay. Um, so those would be the next steps. And you just kind of continue to refine. Now, I do want to point out one more thing before we get into questions. And that is some of the best storytellers that I know personally. Bob Quinn is one of them. Many of you online know Bob. He has the best stories. And, me being someone who really wants to learn how to tell good stories, so I pay attention. He always has a piece of paper and takes notes throughout the whole day. What he's doing is he's noticed, because I've asked him, he's noticing these moments that he sees something unusual, something, like that was a really positive gesture. And he just makes a note of it. So I've learned to do the same thing. I can't do it with paper because I lose those scraps of paper and they're all over the place. So what I've done is I created a form, a Google form, and it just asks one question, like what happened today? And it will keep the date. And then every day I fill this in. Now, sometimes throughout the day, I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to put it in there. And what I put in is what seemed really unusual, interesting. And I try to get as much detail as I can because I'm going to need to give the context. So, like, what was the situation? What was I feeling? What was I thinking? But I don't have to do the whole story. I'll have enough to remember. But I tend to forget those context things that really help make for a good story. Now, some days, I'll get to the end of the day and I'm like, I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. What I do is I will start typing and I start out by saying, I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. I could probably talk about what happened in the classroom today when I was doing this. Well, yeah, actually, now I have to roll into it, right? I have to let my mind relax a bit, and then it kind of comes. So if you feel like I have nothing to, I don't have those interesting moments, just let your mind go. It's the writing process where it comes out. And I think that's the big takeaway here. It is you don't know your story until you've really written it down, you know? That's how you find your stories. So with that, I am happy to take some questions. Um, would love to know your thoughts. I mean, I've done a lot of this work with students. I'm currently teaching this approach with a positive leadership class. But I would love to hear your thoughts. You're coming from so many different areas of the world and life. And I really want this to be applicable to everyone.
Thank you
And I
so much,
need,
Amy. I'm going to
yeah,
introduce Tom here. Let's give Amy a big thank you and big hand. We can't clap, but let's shake our hands and do something for everything we've learned from you today. Our co-founder Tom Sohai is going to come lead our Q&A with you. So I'm going to transition out. But if you have not yet, put your questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom so that we can engage with you for the next couple minutes. Let's put Tom on the spotlight here. Oops.
So got
Oh,
Amy's screen.
and I did want to actually, I have a handout that walks you through this whole thing, and I will put it in the chat that will help you with the whole thing. Let me just take care of that, and then I am happy to chat with Tom.
Very cool. Amy, it is such a great pleasure to listen to you and to hear your stories. You are an absolute treasure
Well, thank you.
to us here and to me personally. Let's all right, stop the participant sharing. There we are. Okay. So we can just see one another. Um, I have a colleague who's a screenwriter. He teaches screenwriting. And the saddest part of that when I talk with him about screenwriting is he says nobody ever knows who the screenwriters are.
Yes.
That everyone celebrates the director, the actor, but the person that creates the narratives, that creates the story, without which we wouldn't have films or cinema or anything, is never known. These storytellers are pretty powerful when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crafting our narratives that we listen to, crafting our stories that we treasure and enjoy with one another. But what I want to ask you about, actually, let's go to Brian. We got a question from Brian in the Q&A. Brian asks, some of our deepest learning experiences come from our lowest lows.
So true.
Have you used this method for those types of personal experiences also?
Yes, yes. So often people will think, well, if it's a positive story, you got to be positive. One of my favorite story, well, favorite best story, most impactful story is about the relationship I had with my brother-in-law, who had um, a genetic disorder where he had uh, migraines, strokes, and dementia over 15 years. And so that was a really hard story. But what I learned from that is that, bad, low lows are prompting others to really step up in the most humane way. And that's where we love that kind of story because it's showing us how we can step in, right? And so low lows, absolutely, absolutely. Low lows are, even when you personally are striving for something, we really resonate with those. The issue is, are you willing to share a low low?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I was going to follow up on. You made yourself incredibly open when you were listening to your colleagues and to your world. It seems that openness and just being there in the moment, mindfulness, right, seems to be a part of this.
Yeah, one of the things I've realized, and this is true for, positive organizations, like anything where you're looking for the positive end of the distribution that's unusual, a lot of it
Mhm.
has to do with noticing. So it's not that things don't happen, that, it's just that we haven't trained ourselves to notice them. So we notice all the bad stuff because it smacks us in the face, but the positive is more like a whisper. And so being attuned to that whisper and then saying, wait a second, I would need to pay attention. Yeah.
Mhm. In the chat, we had a question. It said, "This has been such an eye-opening presentation." Totally agree. My question is, how can we use positive storytelling as a practical tool in everyday conversations, especially when trying to uplift others who may be going through difficult or discouraging moments? That comes from Latara.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you just roll right into that story, you fit that story into that conversation. People love stories. They're going to love to hear the story, right? And so if it's relevant, it might be something like, well, let me share something with you. This happened, blah, 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 and just roll right into it. And, I think a really important part is when you get to the end, when you talk about the meaning, allow yourself to feel that. Allow yourself to feel that, and they will connect with you, and you're gonna send those good vibes.
The other thing that's sort of connected to this in a big, gigantic way is listening.
Yeah.
When you walked down that corridor and saw those two individuals, you were listening. You didn't expect to listen to them,
Right.
right? You were surprised to go, whoa, but you were at a point where you were open to, it changing you, right? So I'm
Yes.
wondering about empathy and listening and that kind of thing as a part of this process.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like I've grown up as a cynical person, which you think would be unusual if you're in, positive stuff. But that's exactly why I'm in positive stuff, because I don't want to be cynical. And so when you're cynical, you kind of close yourself off and you're not letting things come in. And to open yourself up to hear differences, see differences, be curious, it allows you to grow. It allows you to move into a different space, and it's allowed me to go from being really cynical to really seeing the possibility and embracing that.
But sort of a cynicism, our critique mode comes with our professor hats.
Oh, it sure does.
Right, we go, oh well, it's missing that, or that isn't quite there yet. But there's more to it because the big picture, it's about learning, and really falling in love with learning.
Yes,
We want our students to, and we want everybody that we're interacting with to fall in love with the process.
right,
Maggie Pitts is to savor the process,
right.
to immerse ourselves into the process, to get lost in the process rather than just critiquing it. Turning off the critical mind is hard in organizations, I imagine. That sometimes we want to fix things.
Yes,
Our fix
exactly.
it
Yeah.
mind goes, "Oh, I want to fix it,"
It's
rather than absorb it. And sometimes there's no solution, right?
that's right.
They don't want us to fix it. They just want somebody to go, okay,
Yes.
I hear you. Um, do you think the challenge today, especially with so many stories around in social media and in everywhere? I mean, everybody has a story. I can't go on social media for 5 seconds without somebody giving me a version of the story that they want me to listen to or like, or how do
Hmm.
I cope with all of these stories that are just flying at me left and right?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. So are they, um, I just kind of wonder, do you understand the reason why it's coming to you? Like why are they
Right.
putting I
Right.
don't know. I don't know that reason. I mean, when I tell stories, it's because uh it's uplifted me and I needed that, right? And I know other people need it too. And so that's
Yeah.
one of the things I try to focus on, is it looking at us at our very best? We could spend a lot of time focusing on all the things that are wrong, but it never shows us a pathway to developing what's right. And with each one of these stories, there is a lesson to learn about how to get there. Like the Kim Cameron one, it is you just need to do one small gesture. That's all you need to do. And that's what I tell my class. If you do one small gesture every day, tiny, tiny, we will change the world because it affects all the people around you. And then they go ahead and do it, you know?
Absolutely. There's Maggie, and she's getting ready to tell us to stop, right, Maggie? Is that your plan? Maggie always comes in and helps us to remind us that time is up, or
I
time is
have the
short, or precious.
I I have the time is in front of us to take action, to move beyond whispers of positive communication, to embed them in the stories that we craft and we tell, to create hope for all of us in our daily life and the daily lives of those who are, in front of us, the lives that we're impacting in futures unknown. But yes, I am also known as the closer. So it is it is very hard for me to do this role. Just so much gratitude for Amy and for sharing the story of Kim Cameron that really humanizes a person that I think I'd be intimidated. I know it's not intimidating, but that much influence. And Jackson's story. These are beautiful stories to tell And that's one of the things that we try to do with the Positive Communication Network is to create opportunities to connect all of us. We see people from all over the globe, lots of time zones, multiple languages, multiple lived experiences in this Zoom room with us now. So thank you so much for being there. We have opportunities through the Positive Communication Network to celebrate research, scholarship, and practice annually through our annual free conference, also on Zoom. And we have book parties and other features that we do to bring people together. Today, thank you, Amy, for kicking off our first ever Positive Comm Network workshop. And this is something that we're thinking to bringing to our audience with more regularity. And the founders have been having a conversation about how can we do more work with our Positive Communication Network. And so we have a poll that we would like to, I practiced earlier. Let's see if I can do it. If you could take a moment and reflect on kind of the value of this workshop, for you. Our question is, in the future, might we be able to generate some revenue so that we can help create more opportunities for all of you and all of us in creating PosComm network connections? That this might be something that people would be interested in contributing financially toward. So a quick poll for you to say, is this something that you might have, finances that you would be able to support? And if so, what level seems like the right level for you? Thank you, everybody, for being here. We will sort of pay attention to the poll. We're so grateful for you to give those reflections and responses. Please do keep up with the chat. I can see lots of conversation and thanks and gratitude, especially to Amy. And let's just give one final celebration, round of applause, gratitude showing for Amy Young. Thank you so much.
Thank you.